Okay, now we're officially starting. I'm going to introduce myself for those who don't know me. My name is Karen Dion, and I write psychological suspense set in Michigan's Upper Peninsula wilderness. And so my two novels have been international bestsellers. And as you know, as we were talking before, The Marsh King's Daughter is soon to be released as a major motion picture starring Daisy Ridley and Ben Mendelsohn. So I'm pretty super excited about that. You know, for an author, that's the icing on the cake. We write books. It's all about books, you know, and we don't expect them to be made into a movies, but it's definitely a new experience for me. All right, now I'm going to introduce our speakers tonight. Wylie is a novelist living in and writing about North Carolina. He's the New York Times bestselling author of A Land More Kind Than Home. He's been a fellow at Yaddo and the MacDowell Colony, and he teaches fiction writing and literature at the University of North Carolina, Asheville, where he serves as alumni author in residence. His new novel, When Ghosts Come Home, do you have a copy?
I do not. No, I'm the worst. I'm the worst self-promoter ever. I do not. I've got it all memorized, but I don't have a copy of it with me.
Well, you're on the road, I know. Okay, so his new novel is When Ghosts Come Home, and it published last September. And our tech guy is going to put the titles of the books and all these things in the chat, so you can refer to them there. And yes, John is Wylie is on the road right now, calling in from a motel. He wants us to know that this is not his normal decorating.
Not my normal wallpaper.
Right. And then we have John Clinch. His novels are known for taking deeply humane looks at unlikely and often unlikable characters. This is so true in his breakout novel, Finn, which is the secret history of Huckleberry Finn's father. So, you know, can there be a worse character than that? I don't think so. Finn was named an American Library Association notable book and chosen as one of the year's best novels by the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, the Christian Science Monitor, and it's widely taught in high schools and colleges, both alone and alongside Mark Twain. So imagine that. And his most recent novel, do you have a copy, John?
Somewhere. Oh, wait a minute. I have Wylie's book. I'm just kidding.
All right. His newest novel is Marley, and this revisits the world of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol and creates deeply entwined personal histories for Jacob Marley and Ebenezer Scrooge. Isn't that
also
cool?
More not nice people.
Yes, right. Exactly. But John is a nice person, so you don't have to worry about that. And then we have Jean Kwok. She's the award-winning New York Times and international best-selling author of Girl in Translation, Mambo in China, Town, and Searching for Sylvie Lee, which was a Read with Jenna Today Show book club pick. That's huge. A Bellatrist pick, and an instant New York Times bestseller. Her work has been published in 20 countries and is also taught in schools across the world. This I thought was fascinating. She immigrated from Hong Kong to Brooklyn when she was 5 and worked in a Chinatown clothing factory for much of her childhood. She received her bachelor's degree from Harvard University and earned an MFA from Columbia University. And she's calling in from the Netherlands. And then lastly, we have John Searles. He is the best-selling author of several novels, Her Last Affair, Help for the Haunted, Strange But True, and Boy Still Missing. And his books, too, have been named Best Novel of the Year by the Boston Globe, Entertainment Weekly, and others. Strange But True was adapted for film, which I think is pretty cool, by the producers of La La Land and released by Lionsgate. And so you can check that out. John was the longtime books editor at Cosmopolitan. His essays have been published in the New York Times, Washington Post, and numerous other publications. And he was the keynote speaker at the acclaimed Backspace Writers Conference in New York. That
was fun.
I was the organizer of those conferences, and that's where John and I met. And yes, those were such fun days.
Just say met, Karen, say fell in love, because that's what happened.
Yeah. So John's, I didn't make a note of what your newest book is. Hold up.
It's
Her Last Affair.
I'm gonna have my, unlike Wylie, sorry, just kidding.
I know. All right, so that's the introductions out of the way. Now you all know everything about them, except we have these cool backspace cards and they have questions on the other side. And so we're going to play a game of not quite 20 questions, just so you can help you guys get to know the authors a little bit better. And the authors do not know what these are going to be. So of course they're very nervous right now. And I'm going to ask the questions in the order that I see people on the screen. That puts you first, Jean. So you get the first question.
Uh-oh.
What was your favorite book as a child?
Well, I actually didn't speak English when I first came to the US. So that was, it took me a while before I learned to read. But when I did, I have to say, I really loved Anne of Green Gables. And you would think, what did I, like this, completely out of place immigrant Chinese girl, have in common with redheaded Anne? But I felt she was a kindred spirit. That's the power of books, isn't it?
Yes, lovely. That's really true. John Searles, where do you write?
In the bathtub, usually, actually. On a lot of legal pads of paper in the bath.
Isn't that dangerous, John? I mean, don't they all get wrinkled and like dropped in the water?
Yeah. I've ruined a couple computers over the years, couple cell phones. I don't know. I grew up in a really tiny house with 2 bedrooms, 4 kids, 4 of us, my parents, my grandfather, dogs, cats, fish, birds, all kinds of pets. And there was 1 bathroom, and the only place to escape for quiet was to go in the bathtub. And I used to go in the bathtub and read. And that's, I think, always a comfort for me. I love taking my computer or my legal pads in the bathtub, and I just scribble away.
That's a first. I've never heard of anybody writing in the bathtub. Obviously it works for you. So thank you. And Wylie, is your desk messy or tidy?
Oh gosh, it's pretty messy. My wife is a photographer and we share an office together. So our desk, I had an early midlife crisis a couple of years ago, and instead of buying a Corvette and growing a mustache, I had someone in the town where we live, Wilmington, North Carolina, make me this big, gorgeous desk out of black locust wood. And I thought it was the coolest thing. And then we moved a couple of times, and then we got an office and we moved that a couple of times. And now I'm like, I wish I had just bought a Corvette instead of this enormous heavy desk. But it is messy, and it is also embarrassingly, painfully large and messy as well.
Yeah. It's always interesting. So, John Clinch, what's the title of the first thing you ever wrote?
Grimshaw. If we're talking about something sort of as an adult, I can't remember anything from childhood. I can't remember anything from childhood. But the first novel I ever wrote, which is why I'm always careful to call them novels until they're books, because that never became a book, was called Scrimshaw. It taught me a lot. It taught me that nobody was interested in a serial comic whaling novel, and that I needed to readjust my sights somehow.
Cool. Yeah, I would definitely like to hear more about that in the breakout room. So
Some of the characters, 3 characters from Scrimshaw appear in Marley.
Oh, cool.
Actually 4.
You must have had so much fun.
I did. And I'm the only, my wife and I and my daughter are the only people who will ever know.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. So, Jean, what did you read that, really excited you and that you want to recommend to others?
I really loved The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. And I actually feel, of course, a lot of people know this book is a huge bestseller at this point, but I actually got to read it early before it was on sale and before everybody knew it would be a huge book. And I loved it because it was just such a it was so intimate. It was so smart. It was such a well-constructed story, but also really thrilling and wonderful to read. But I also have to say that I have to give a little plug out to our own John Searles here, Her Last Affair, which I also got the chance to read early as a blurb. And I love that book so much as well, because guys, it's funny, it's human, it's dark, but it's also really beautifully constructed, where all these storylines tie together in a way that you don't expect. So he's not paying me to say this. I just, happened to have read his book early, and I was thrilled that I could be on this program with him tonight.
Oh, Jean, thank you so much for saying that. Thank you. I'm really honored. Appreciate it.
That's awesome. John Searles, what are you recommending tonight?
Well, Jean, thank you again for that. I wanted to recommend a first-time novelist, this book, Tobacco Wives by Adele Myers. And I met her on something similar to this, some kind of book thing way back when, like 6 months ago. And I read it, and it's a historical novel. The narrator's a young woman, she's 15, it's in North Carolina, and she begins working as a seamstress in the 40s, and she discovers all these unseemly truths about the tobacco industry, and it's just a really great historical novel. And then one other, if I might do really quick, The Golden Couple, which is coming out in a couple weeks, from Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen, which is just, they write these really great page-turning thrillers. So I'm sort of doing a 2-book thing right now, but there we go.
That's nice. That's nice. And I will say that Sarah is going to visit the back room in the coming weeks as part of the spring season. So maybe you can attend as a guest. Wylie, how about you? What are you recommending tonight?
Well, I'm so excited that John shared Adele Myers' new novel, which is set right here in North Carolina, where I am, and she's from Asheville originally. I'll be doing an event with her at the beginning of March when her book comes out. I am recommending another North Carolina writer, Jason Mott, who lives just down the road from us in Eastern North Carolina. It won the National Book Award. His beautiful novel, hell of a book. It is it's probably the only novel I've read that is just breathtaking and heartbreaking and side-splittingly funny and smart. It's a story about race and identity and violence and art and writing and authors on book tour, which parts of which are just stunningly hilarious. And I want to give a shout out to Jason, especially. We talked about the difficulties of the writing life. Maybe 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, we were hanging out. He had just come off this terrible book tour. And he said, I really want to write a book about an author on book tour. And my editor said no. And he left that editor and went somewhere else and wrote the book he wanted to write and won the National Book Award. So don't give up.
Wow, that's fantastic. Nice to hear. John Clinch, what are you recommending tonight?
I don't have my copy of This Is Happiness by Niall Williams. He's an Irish writer. I don't have it because I loaned it to my daughter. I hand out copies of this book like vaccines. It's one of the finest books I've read in years and years and years, and I kid you not. Niall Williams is, as I say, an Irishman, and he writes in this particular book about a period, believe it or not, in the 1960s when electricity was coming through a certain portion of Ireland, and people had to decide whether they wanted electricity in their houses or not. That's a large part of it. It's also a love story. It's a family story. It's a story about religion. It's a story that sounds in its language an awful lot like one of my other favorite writers, the mighty Frank McCourt. The language is beautiful, hilarious, and touching. And the best thing about it is the title, This Is Happiness, turns out not to be ironic. Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful thing. I also want to recommend, you people have probably heard about the Guillermo del Toro movie, Nightmare Alley, which is out right now. About 6 months ago, I read Nightmare Alley for the first time. It blew me away. And for the only time in my history, rather than put it down, I started it again. It's it's something. I mean, what can I tell you? You may, if you've seen the movie, you have not read the book.
Wasn't that fun? We hope you enjoyed this taste of what a backroom event is like. The best part comes immediately after, when the audience is divided into 4 breakout rooms and the authors visit each room in turn. We'd love to show you what a breakout session is like, because these relaxed face-to-face conversations between authors and readers are the hallmark of our backroom events. But breakout sessions are never recorded. What's said in the backroom stays in the backroom.